Home, they say, is where the heart is. Home is not a place, it's a feeling. When you're there, you know it. And I know why you're here. You'd like to know more about how housing works. Maybe I can help. This is Foundation, and I am Lord Bara. Residential, as it's known in Foundation, works differently from other city builders. In some ways it's more simplistic, but in other ways it's not. Residential housing is not ploppable, it's not placeable. Instead, it's connected to all of the other systems that are going on in your town. And especially for new players, I can understand why that would be frustrating. So let me do my best to try and unravel some of this mystery for you. This is the Villagers tab. This is the troubleshooting page for housing, amongst other things. Right now, it's telling me that every single villager in the town of Boring needs a house. I've even got a little warning sign. So, without making it unnecessarily complicated or overly complex, this is how you create housing areas in Foundation. You use the green residential paintbrush with two shapes to choose from, either a circle or a square, whichever you prefer. And both brushes are scalable. They can be teeny tiny or really big by holding Control on the keyboard and scrolling the mouse wheel. And for the benefit of this, I'm just going to use the maximum size circular brush to paint a single area for housing. As simply as this. No roads to build, no infrastructure to worry about, you just paint. Then you can sit back and watch as your villagers go about busying themselves building their houses. And as you can see, they've managed to fit 3 different houses into this space. And they've fitted perfectly within the circle. Because in Foundation, whatever shape you draw for a residential area is the shape that the housing will take. That's pretty unique. As you can see, when you click on a house, you get a little house pop-up. This is the information pane that tells you what's going on in the house. You can find out who's living in there and how many people are living in there. This house has 2 people. I'll talk more about that later. As an overview, there are 2 ways to upgrade housing in Foundation, either quality or density. They're both displayed here on the Housing tab and are represented as low, medium and high. Each tier has its own requirements that need to be met before the house will upgrade. And as you can see, the requirement for the lowest tier housing is simply to have a residential area, which is what we have. I'll go over some of the other requirements later, but for now, the most important thing to understand is that any house that is near an undesirable building, such as a stonecutter, for example, will simply refuse to upgrade. And you can easily find out what areas are undesirable by toggling on a layer, just like this. One of the requirements for a medium quality house is to have beautification. And that's referring to props called decorations, which can be found in the Build tab. Anything with a little sunflower in the bottom right hand corner is a decoration. They're not free though, they have a cost associated for them. And you can get your first set by unlocking them in the Common Path Tier 2. Pro tip, hold Shift when clicking to instantly build the item that you've got. There we have it, now a beautiful area. The next requirement for a tier 2 house is to have a commoner. Now, that's not straightforward. You'll need a bailiff, you'll need a manor house, you'll need a church. You'll also need to have satisfied all of the needs for your villagers at some point. Well, we'll get to it, but I don't want to get sidetracked with that just now. Let's focus on housing principles a little bit longer. And as the village grows, eventually we will unlock the ability to promote commoners. Go on, ask me the question. Well, it's true that if you scale your brush up from the smallest 11 times, you will get to the minimum size brush that you need to create a single house. But foundation is smarter than that. Because a house will conform to the shape of the area that you draw, you can get a lot more creative than that. So don't think about it in terms of the size of the plot, think about it more in terms of the area of the plot. Yes, it's less about the size, it's more about what you do with it that matters. While it's true that you don't create roads in Foundation, that doesn't mean that you don't have any control over roads. There are a few different techniques that I use when creating road networks in Foundation, and here's one that I use with housing. Simply pick a brush and draw a line, and then using the square brush, simply draw plots along the side of the line. Like you just saw a moment ago, I can create individual plots for individual houses, just like this, and have 1, 2, 3 houses appear. Or I can just create a larger residential area and let the villagers figure it out. The systems allow you to be flexible and creative. No pressure. Here, let me show you what I mean. Imagine I wanted a very long plot for a house. Well, all I need to do is just draw a very long plot, like that. And now the house that's going to be built there, the homeowner will be very proud with a nice long garden. And I've also used it to kind of naturally fence in the town square. In case you didn't know, there's a shortcut to the villagers page of the Royal Book by right-clicking on the happiness at the top of the screen. And as you can see, it looks like I've just got one more villager that doesn't have a house. Bear with me a second, I just want to use some fencing to tidy up what I've just built. You can make some pretty interesting shaped housing plots. You should experiment and see what you can come up with. What happens when you create a residential area, but the house that's being built there isn't to your liking? Well, I just built 2 fisher huts, and they're going to need some additional housing now to house the villagers that are going to work in them. So if I now create an area for my residential, and you don't have to do it like this, I'm just choosing to use the fences. I can tell the villagers this is where I want you to build a house next to the fishermen's huts, please. And straight away they'll build a house that's only big enough for 2 people. I don't want that. So I'll demolish the house, change the shape of the residential area, because I think I should be able to fit 2 houses into that space. Maybe I can't, but we will find out. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of trial and error. I've got one to go, get the other one to go. Yes. Okay. I know that there are some grid junkies out there, so this one's for you. As before, select a brush and draw out your lines to represent your roads. I just do it freehand, but if you struggle with the straight lines, you can always hold the mouse click button and then use the WASD keys to get a nice straight line. I'm also following the contour of the lake here, but I want to create a grid-like pattern, so it should look something like this. And once it's done, you can take your residential brush and fill in one house at a time. Be careful, try to stay in the lines. I'm going to need some extra villagers for this. And they should build a house just there. There we go. You can pre-plan a large area if you want, or do it one at a time like this and be even more controlling over it. Now that the housing system's been updated so that the houses conform to the shapes that you draw, grids in Foundation have never been easier. While all that was going on, all of my villagers' needs got fulfilled, and now they can be promoted to a commoner. Which means that if I want, I can now upgrade my housing to tier 2 quality. You should know that quality upgrades are cosmetic only, but density upgrades increase the housing capacity from 2 to 6 to 10. I'll show you what both look like, but let me just first build this. It's the watch post. It's in the manor monument, and it's an essential part of being able to upgrade the density of your housing. You can also get the same benefit in the castle monument, but it's a different challenge, and the effect is the same. You need to first unlock the watch post here in the progression screen. And now you have access to this tower, this wall, or the watch post that you just saw me build, which will create a pink area of effect that will allow your houses to upgrade, as long as they fall within it. There are two ways to promote villagers. You can do it either from here in the Bailiffs tab in the Promote section, where you'll get a full list of all of your villagers and how much it costs to promote them. Or you can do it this way. I want this house to upgrade, so I'm going to choose both of the villagers that are living in this house, and at the top of their information pane you can now see that there's a little button that says Promote. Now that there are commoners living in there and it's in a beautiful area, it will now begin to upgrade to a tier 2 house. But because this is a quality upgrade, it will still only house 2 villagers. Okay, let's look at upgrading the density of this house here. It's got a different set of requirements from the quality upgrade, and you can go about this in quite a few different ways. Light fortifications is one of the requirements, and that refers to this pink zoning. I'm using the watchtower as an example. It's a cheap and effective way to create light fortification zoning over a large area. And in simplified words, it will cost 1 villager to run. Now, there's a whole gameplay element around this which I'm not going to go into here, otherwise I'll have to go wildly off topic and start talking about something completely different which is nothing to do with housing. Another way to create that zone is to use the village fortification wall. It works just like the regular walls, except when you enclose it, it will create that pink zoning area, as you'll see. You'll need to leave a little gap so villagers can get in and out of the enclosure, but as long as it's not too big, it will be considered zoned. Now that that's built, you'll be able to see in the housing information that we now have light fortification coverage. The second requirement that you need for tier 2 density is patrol coverage, and that is why we built the watchtower earlier. I hope you're following this. But now that the watchtower is built, I have the ability to employ patrollers and watchmen. I'm just going to add a couple of patrollers and a watchman for the benefit of this. And the watchmen are the villagers that will go to those towers that I didn't build, or this guard location here, which functions as basically the same thing but on a slightly smaller scale. And you don't need to build the wall in order to use it. Now that we have our patrollers, we also have a new brush. It's called the patrol brush. It's bright pink, and you'll use this to paint the houses specifically that you want to upgrade. You are essentially telling the game at this point that this is the house that I want to upgrade, please. As long as your houses have enough space, they will upgrade. And they should look something like this. There is more to say on housing, but those are the essentials. If you're interested to see what it looks like to build one of the watchpost towers, then stick around and I'll finish off the video with that. And pro tip, if you build an independent manor house watch post vestibule, try saying that 3 times fast, with a patroller and a watchman alongside one of the watch post towers, you'll get a more efficient coverage and a more reliable coverage to meet the housing needs. But apart from that, I'll just say, if you have been, thank you for watching, thank you for listening. If you have been, leave a like. This has been Foundation, and I have been Lord Bara.